Hello, friends. This is Confessions with Amy. Here we share new confessions every day.
My name is Emerson Ward. I'm 29 years old. I'm the lead structural engineer on a federal project worth $640 million. Tomorrow, I'll be stepping into a boardroom in downtown Denver to finalize approval on the seismic upgrade designs for a regional medical defense facility. The twist: the board I'll be presenting to includes the man who told me I wasn't built for real-world architecture. My ex-mentor, my ex-fiancé, my ex-future. They don't know I'm the one heading the entire integrity analysis. Not yet. Tomorrow, I won't walk in as the intern who made coffee or the girl who talked too soft in team meetings. I'll walk in as the woman they wrote off, who quietly rebuilt everything they once said I couldn't. But tonight, I'll sit across from them at a dinner I didn't ask to be invited to, the retirement celebration of Harold Kane, founder of Kane Design Group, the firm I once considered family. They'll toast to legacy. They'll pass around praise. And they won't realize the person they're ignoring at the end of the table is the one whose name is on the federal brief they've been chasing for 6 months. I'll let them have their speeches. Tomorrow, I speak with schematics, metrics, and authority. And when I sign the final structural certification as Chief Engineer Ward, the silence will say more than I ever could. The last time I stood in that office, I was 23 and crying in the stairwell. Harold Kane had just called me overeager and underprepared, told me I lacked the structural instincts needed for design leadership, and suggested I might be better suited for interior layout or, God forbid, marketing. He said it with a kind smile, the kind that made you doubt your own gut before you doubted his words. Across the table, his golden boy and heir apparent, Alec Rowe, had said nothing. He didn't look at me. He didn't defend me. He was my fiancé then. I wore his mother's ring. We'd already toured venues in Estes Park and picked out flatware at Crate and Barrel. None of that mattered the moment I disagreed with Alec during a concept review on seismic load calculations of all things. I wasn't rude. I wasn't reckless. I was just correct. But that didn't matter in a room full of men who had built a whole company on the illusion of never being questioned. 2 weeks later, the engagement was paused. 2 months later, I left the firm, technically resigned, but we all knew what it meant. I remember Harold's parting words. Sometimes, Emerson, knowing when to yield is the mark of real maturity. I walked out of Kane Design Group with no job, no ring, and the feeling that the blueprint of my life had just been erased. That year I applied to 27 firms. None bit. The references didn't help, especially when your last title was junior drafting consultant, and you'd left under a cloud of polite disapproval. So I started again. Not from scratch, from foundation. Night classes in earthquake modeling. Internships I was overqualified for. Projects no one wanted. Disaster-prone zones. Unfunded bridges. Compliance documentation in 12-point times New Roman. But I learned. By 25, I was leading small teams. At 27, I earned my seismic safety certification, one of only 8 women in my state to hold it. At 28, I was offered the lead engineer role on the Federal Medical Contingency Hub program, what would become Fort Horizon, the largest military-grade civilian infrastructure upgrade in a generation. And now, at 29, I'm signing off on plans Alex still doesn't know I drew. In my bedroom tonight, there are no photos of white dresses or rose gold rings. There's a black binder with 90 pages of integrity reports signed under my name. There's a carefully folded navy blue blazer with my engineering accreditation pin on the lapel. And there's the quiet hum of the city outside my Denver apartment, steady, alive, and unshaken. They buried my name 6 years ago. Tomorrow, I'll raise it in the middle of their legacy and watch what cracks. The Kane Design Group headquarters hadn't changed in 6 years. Same monolithic concrete exterior, same 2-white reception lounge that smelled like lacquered wood and ambition. The retirement dinner was held in the Sky Room on the 23rd floor. Private, minimalist, glass walls overlooking the Denver skyline. The kind of place where men clinked glasses over contracts and legacy, not people. I arrived 10 minutes early. Not out of eagerness, out of precision. Always early, always prepared, always invisible until it mattered. Guest list, the woman at the desk asked, without glancing up. Emerson Ward, I said calmly. +1. She scrolled, paused, "All right, Ms. Ward. You're with," she hesitated, brow furrowed. "External advisory." Something like that. She handed me a name badge that read, M. Ward, Consultant, in muted black ink. No title. No credentials. No hint that I'd be signing their funding documents tomorrow morning. Perfect. The room was already filling. Mid-century furniture. Champagne flutes. Polished handshakes. Harold Kane stood near the back, regal as ever in a slate blue suit, flanked by people who owed their mortgages to his name. Alec was beside him. Older now, sharper at the edges, like a drawing re-inked too many times. He still had that confident lean, the half-smile that only showed when he thought he held all the cards. He didn't see me yet. I walked the perimeter unnoticed. Not hiding, observing. Photos lined the wall. Harold at job sites, blueprints in hand, ribbon cuttings, awards. I found one of Alec at 28, pointing at a digital rendering I'd helped build. No credit, just his name on the caption. I wondered if he'd ever told them who actually reworked that stress distribution model after the seismic inspector nearly shut them down. Doubt it. At 6:32 p.m., they dimmed the lights. Harold gave a speech about legacy. He thanked his team. He thanked Alec. He made a passing joke about strong-willed interns who didn't always take feedback. Laughter. Polite. Muffled. I didn't blink. When the crowd toasted, I lifted my glass too. Let them have tonight. Let them bask in the glow of a foundation they thought was flawless. Tomorrow, they'd learn who reinforced it when it almost cracked. After dessert, overpriced tiramisu in etched glass cups, Alec finally saw me. He did a double take, then walked over like nothing had happened, as if 6 years hadn't passed without a word. He asked, incredulous. Wow. I didn't expect. He trailed off, waiting for me to fill the space. I was in the area, I said, taking a sip of water. It tasted like hotel glassware and unsaid things. So what are you doing these days? He asked, flashing that charming awkwardness he always used when he wanted information without giving any. Consulting, I replied evenly. Huh. Funny. We're actually prepping a pitch for a federal build, Fort Horizon. Heard of it? He smiled. I smiled back. I have. Back at the hotel, I didn't turn on the lights right away. The room was quiet, a luxury I'd earned. Outside, downtown Denver blinked with distant office windows and street lamps humming like thoughts you couldn't quite silence. Inside, I moved with mechanical calm. Deliberate. Centered. The suitcase was already laid out on the bed. Everything folded, aligned, pressed to regulation sharpness. A charcoal gray suit, tailored for presence, not performance. A leather folio case with my full reports. 3 pens. 1 black, 1 blue, 1 redundant. Not because I expected failure. Because I never assumed the world will be ready when I am. On the nightstand was a small photo face down. My mother at my grad school ceremony. The last time she called me engineer. After I left Kane Design, she stopped asking about my work. Said things like, "You were always too intense for that place." Translation, "You made them uncomfortable, and I don't want to admit why." I lifted the photo, then slid it into a drawer. Not out of resentment, out of clarity. Tomorrow isn't about them. It isn't about Alec. It isn't even about proving I was right. It's about the work, the clean math of it, the quiet triumph of being essential and irreplaceable. I took the blazer from its hanger. Inside the collar, stitched in slate thread, were my initials and certification tag. Not flashy, not for display, but precise. I ran a lint brush down each sleeve, checked for thread pulls, polished the brass badge with the same soft cloth I used before defense briefings. Every motion was muscle memory. Every detail, intact, deliberate, unshakable. On the desk, my credentials sat stacked. License, security badge, project pass, federal clearance ID with the Department of Health and Human Services seal stamped in dark blue. Tomorrow I'd walk into that boardroom and watch Harold and Alec glance at the chair reserved for the federal lead engineer, not realizing it's mine until I sit in it. I don't need applause. I don't need their regret. All I need is the room. And the work. 8:42 a.m. I pulled into the federal contractor garage beneath the building on Larimer and 19th. Security swept the car twice. My clearance badge triggered an immediate gate lift. No questions. On the elevator ride to the 26th floor, I adjusted my blazer, checked my ID one last time, and rolled back my shoulders the way they taught us in grad school defense seminars. Enter like the room already knows you belong. Outside the boardroom, a bronze placard read, Fort Horizon, Structural Compliance Review, Phase 3. Lead contact. E. Ward, PEFSCI. The receptionist glanced up as I approached. Ms. Ward, she said, standing quickly. They're almost ready for you. Would you like coffee? I'm fine, thank you. At 8:56, I stepped into the boardroom. Harold was already seated at the far end, hands folded neatly over a leather-bound notebook. Alex stood near the whiteboard, prepping a slide deck. Their voices paused. I felt it before they registered me. That flicker of confusion. Then, recognition. Shock. And the scramble to find a framework where this made sense. Harold's brows pulled together. Emerson. His tone like I'd wandered into the wrong floor. Alex's face had already gone still. Ms. Ward is here as lead engineer for structural compliance, the project coordinator announced, closing the door behind me. She'll be conducting today's final approval review. No one moved. I set my folio on the table, took the seat beside the program director, and opened the first page of my documentation. Good morning, I said, my voice calm, clipped exact. We'll begin with subgrade reinforcement revisions, then move through lateral load recalibrations based on the updated hazard model. Harold cleared his throat. Wait, you're the one who... I lead the engineering team contracted through DHS for critical infrastructure certification, I said without looking up. Your firm is one of 7 shortlisted for final bid approval. No apology. No pause. Just data. The review began. I asked questions Alec couldn't answer. Requested a latency tolerance report that Harold clearly hadn't read. When Alec tried to pivot, I redirected him, politely, professionally, but with undeniable authority. The room shifted. Slowly, then all at once. The engineers stopped looking to Harold. They started looking to me. By 9:47 a.m., no one remembered I'd once been the girl who fetched blueprints and proofread pitch decks. By 10:12, I had control of the room. Ms. Ward, Harold said finally, after the last slide had flickered away. His voice was rougher now. Measured. Humbled. We weren't aware of your position. I sent the updated org chart 2 weeks ago, I replied. I looked him in the eye. Perhaps you didn't recognize the name. He didn't respond. He didn't have to. The silence did everything for him. The meeting adjourned just after 11 a.m. The boardroom emptied in quiet bursts. Handshakes, nods, shuffling laptops and thick binders. Everyone had somewhere to be. Except the 3 of us. Harold lingered by the window, arms crossed behind his back. Alec leaned against the credenza, arms folded, eyes downward, the posture of someone accustomed. I gathered my notes in silence, clipped them into my folio. My badge caught a flicker of light, FSCI stamped beneath my name, Fellow of Structural Engineers International. Only 3% ever reach it. Harold finally turned. Emerson, he said, the name slow in his mouth, like it had gained weight. We didn't know. You didn't ask, I replied simply. Alex stepped forward. You weren't on the early memos. I didn't even recognize your initials on the proposal. I thought. He stopped. What he meant was, I thought you disappeared. I didn't respond. I let him sit with it. You've built something, Harold said, quieter now. Something real. I raised an eyebrow. As opposed to what? Coffee orders and C80 cleanups. He flinched, just slightly. It wasn't cruelty. It was honesty. You were talented, he said. Back then. But... No. I cut in, voice firm but even. Don't rewrite it now. I stepped away from the table, blazer buttoned, posture clean. You told me I didn't have instinct. That I wasn't suited for the field. That I needed to yield to authority. So I did, just not yours. Harold looked older, suddenly. Not fragile, but fallible. Alec exhaled, slow. You were fair today, he said. You didn't humiliate us. You could have. I wasn't here for revenge, I said. I was here to certify structural integrity. Not just for the building. Silence settled again, not awkward, not tense. Just final. Then Harold did something I never expected. He extended his hand. "We were wrong about you," he said. "I was wrong. And I suspect we didn't want to imagine you surpassing us. That's on me." I looked at the hand, not with hesitation, but with measure, and I shook it, not to accept an apology, to close a door. "Congratulations, Emerson," he added softly. "No title, no qualifiers, just my name, the way it should have always been said." 6 weeks later, my new office overlooked the Capitol. Not the White House, not the monuments, but the bones of a city, steel beams, seismic retrofits, reinforced bridges stretching out across real, imperfect ground. That's what mattered to me. Things that could carry weight. The nameplate on my desk said, E. Ward, Lead Structural Engineer, National Infrastructure Authority. Below it, a framed schematic of Fort Horizon, signed off by every agency involved. Mine was the last name at the bottom. That morning, I received a parcel. No return address. Inside, a silver compass, heavy engraved. Build what they said you couldn't. No signature. But I knew who sent it. That evening, I had dinner with my mentor from graduate school, Dr. Lee. She was the first person who told me I was meant to lead, not follow. Over roasted squash and quiet jazz, she asked how I felt about what had happened at Kane. I thought for a long time before answering. "Strangely calm," I said, like I walked through a door I'd already stopped knocking on. She smiled. "That's the best kind of closure." Later, alone in my apartment, I stood in front of my bookshelf. Blueprints, models, binders. Between them, a single photo I'd allowed back onto the shelf. Me, hard hat slightly askew, sleeves rolled up, laughing at a construction site in Tacoma. No ribbon, no ceremony, just me in my element. I used to believe I needed applause, needed them to say I was enough. But the truth is simpler. I became enough without them. Walking into that boardroom wasn't about revenge. It was about claiming space I had always been worthy of. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't demand respect. I stood in it, and when they finally looked at me, they saw something that could no longer be erased. Presence, precision, unshakable value. So if they doubt you, let them. If they overlook you, keep building. And when the moment comes, show up whole, silent, undeniable. Because sometimes, the loudest victory is the one that doesn't need a sound.